Hello humans, today I want to talk about this guy right here. This is a Schrade ss700. Hit my camera stand. Schrade ss700. This is a slip joint style knife made from 1946 until 1973 under the Schrade testing collection. They're kind of cool. They have razor blade stainless, which is not, can you see that? Laser etched onto the blade. It's not very specific what razor blade stainless actually is. A razor blade stainless at the time would have been considered like AEBL, which this doesn't necessarily feel like AEBL. It's kind of more similar to like 420J2 or like a 5CR maybe, somewhere in that vein. It doesn't perform poorly. Especially for an inexpensive slip joint. This is still quite nice. It holds an edge okay, and it is very stainless, but it definitely doesn't feel super premium. It has two blades. This larger blade is, I want to double check this, but I'm pretty sure it was, 3 3/8 inches, whereas the smaller blade is 1 3/4 inches. Both of them are hollow ground. Both of them are very, very slim top to bottom. This is quite normal for melon tester knives. Not all melon tester knives, melon tester knives, citrus testing knives have two blades. This one here in particular does, because this larger blade is designed to cut into softer materials, that kind of a thing. Whereas the smaller blade is designed to cut through packaging or cut apart sausage links so that you can test your meats. So this one here is designed to test meats in addition to your melons with the larger blade. Also kind of unique, especially in older slip joints, the actual back spring is a stainless steel. You don't see this super often, even with older slip joints where the blade itself is a stainless steel. Quite often the back spring is simply a carbon steel because you get more springiness, generally speaking, out of carbon steels, especially simple carbon steels. Like if you're looking for a back spring, you're typically looking for inexpensive. And as far as inexpensive option goes, your inexpensive stainlesses do not have as much spring to them as your inexpensive carbon steels, which is kind of why you see that. The bolsters are nickel brass, and the scales are synthetic plastic material. This logo, Snowboy, I don't know what Snowboy is. For all I know, it's a company dedicated to burning puppies in windmills, but it's hot stamped in and then painted. So it's actually stamped in, and you can kind of hear it's textured slightly as a result of the hot stamping process, which is just kind of neat. The liners are brass, and the whole thing is very, very much designed to be cut through difficult, dense, sticky material efficiently as possible without corroding. So in 1953, which is the earliest documentation and like sales records and stuff like that I could actually find for these were $29 a dozen, or about $2.42 each, which comes out to right around $28.79 in today's money. So that pricing, I mean, it's a little bit more than most companies are willing to pay nowadays for something that you are literally giving away. But when you start looking at historical examples of giveaway items, promotional items, it's pretty in line. It still would be considered relatively inexpensive, but it's still nice enough that you're going to use it fairly often. And now's when we go from talking about this knife specifically, because we're going to do size comparisons, and then I'll stop talking about this knife specifically. So here it is next to the ss700 Chevalier and the Wee Knives Banter. As you can see, it is a decent amount, actually. It's not that much longer than the ss700 Chevalier. It does feel quite a bit longer, but it's not actually that much longer than the ss700 Chevalier. A lot of the reason it feels so long is because of just how thin it is. And here it is next to a Buck 110 and a Zippo lighter. In terms of thickness, this thing's not super thick. Its thickest point is right in the middle of the handle scales, and even then it's only slightly thicker than the blade in one scale, right? So this is not a very, very thick knife by any means. It's actually slimmer than the Zippo at the pivot, and it is noticeably slimmer than the Zippo even at the thickest section in the middle. All right, so with that out of the way, let's talk about melon tester knives more generally. Melon tester knives have been around for a couple hundred years now. They are always designed to maximize the stainlessness and acid resistance for cutting into citrus fruits and stuff. So the earliest examples we have are actually antimicrobial, typically with a silver blade and some type of like mother of pearl or other similar material handles. You'll very, very, very rarely see these with wood or bone handles because you need something that is very, very resistant to chemicals or acids damaging them. So you end up with sort of this very, very rust-resistant design. Nickel silver bolsters, brass liners, synthetic scales, or mother of pearl, or other similar sort of toughness non-organic, or not even non-organic, but like non-corrosive handle scales kind of a deal. A lot of them are only single blade. This one here, of course, does have two blades. Typically, the secondary blade is smaller, more designed for, like I said, cutting apart sausage links or cutting through the skin or outer layer of a dried meat. And these things are extremely, extremely, extremely often stamped with a company logo or something similar. And a big part of the reason why are these are a common giveaway item. Because this is something any melon farmer could be expected to carry, right? Sometimes you have to test your produce on a farm, and something like this is very easy to slip into the pocket. It's very, very practical to carry around, which makes it a extremely appealing option for farmers and people who have to test a lot of melons, right? And as another thing, these would very, very commonly end up in the hands of judges at, for example, county fairs or other sort of competition style where the value of the produce is being tested and selected. And the interesting thing about this, right? This right here, as a result of that, becomes over time associated with a position of power. It's being held by judges, like competition judges. It's being held by inspectors. If you have a produce inspector on your farm, a farm inspector on your farm, testing to make sure that your produce is safe for human consumption, being grown well, whatever, this is something they're going to carry, right? This is a tool being used by a powerful person that over time sort of gains some of its power by proxy. And that makes them really appealing for marketing. Because if you can get your hand, your version, your stamped one of these knives into the hands of a judge at, say, a state fair or a regional championship for melon testing or whatever, then a lot more people are going to see it and it's going to win some of that power and prestige by association. So that's kind of the theory behind so many of these, especially in the 30s through like the 90s, being used for this type of thing. Super, super cool. Which is very, very handy. These also kind of, as a result of that, fit into the unique space of knives that eventually helped define the gentleman's knife branding. So these, in addition to like doctor's knives, helped form this ideal of a relatively long, very, very slim, very easy to carry knife becoming part of becoming this gentlemanly, this powerful, this prestigious thing, right? Because not very many people carry pocket knives as an everyday carry item, right? Like some people would for kitchen work or like out on the camp work kind of a deal, but these were not commonly seen as the everyday carry knife. That was your belt knife, your Buck 119 or your Finnish Puku or whatever you had on your belt. That was typically seen as your everyday carry knife, especially before Buck invented the folding hunter, right? Because folding knives just were not seen as being as capable. In Europe, you had other examples, but again, they're typically very, very thin blades, very, very slicey knives, right? So, but this right here and the doctor's knife are a knife that is carried every day. by people with prestige, by people with respect in a community. A doctor or a produce inspector is somebody who would be seen as prestigious and respect-worthy, which is a valuable thing. So over time, they kind of become like EDC knives for people with prestige, with respect, and this style evolves over time, becomes more practical, gains a lock, and eventually you start seeing like CEO style knives, executive style knives, as very thin profiled long blades. Typically nowadays they have a lock, but even then not always. Typically nowadays they have a pocket clip, but even then not always, right? So it is kind of interesting. I do think that anybody who collects knives should have at least one melon tester. I'm not saying you have to have a melon tester, but I am saying everybody who collects knives should have at least one in their collection as kind of like this history piece for something that eventually became cool, something that you see a lot of the ancestry in modern luxury or prestigious knives. So I do think this is cool. I'm definitely happy I have one. I'm not going to seek out more melon tester knives. It's not something that appeals to me directly, and I don't really care for like marketing throughout the ages, and there's no companies that I know of that would have stamped in melon testers that I'm interested in getting parts for my collection. But yeah, this thing's pretty damn cool. Worth picking up if you see one cheap. I think mine was $5, but it is a unique little bit of history, and they do make a very interesting carrying experience. So there is also that's worth, you know, considering. Yeah, worth a pickup. I wouldn't necessarily go out of my way to find one. Stay safe and have fun out there. Peace.